In 1975, inside a lab in Rochester, New York, a young engineer walks into his boss's office, holding a device the size of toaster. He puts it on the desk and says, "I think I just invented the future of photography." His boss looked at the device and looks at him and says, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about this." That engineer's name was Steve Sasson. The device he built was the world's first digital camera, and the same company that just 20 years later failed for bankruptcy. Killed by the very technology they invented. They appeared and they were too afraid to use. This is not just a story about camera company. This story is about fear, about a business so successful and became terrified of its own future. How does a company with 90% market share and 31 billion valuation and 145,000 employees destroy itself in the less than 15 years? That's exactly what we are going to find out today. Because right now, there are hundreds of companies sitting on technologies, ideas, and innovations they are afraid to use because they are too busy protecting what they already have. And if you own a business, any kind of business, Kodak's story is not history. It is warning letter written directly to you. Let's go back where it's all started. 1880, Rochester, New York. A 20 years old bank clerk named George Eastman was obsessed by photography. But photography at the time was a nightmare. To take a single photo, you need a camera the size of a suitcase, a portable darkroom, glass plates coated in chemicals, and a team of assistants just to carry everything. Photography was not a job for regular people. It was for professionals and scientists. Eastman looked at that and thought, what if anyone could take a photo? In 1888, he launched the Kodak #1. Camera was a slogan that became legendary. You press the button, we do the rest. The camera came preloaded with a film for 100 exposures. When you finished, you mailed the entire camera to Kodak, the entire camera back to Kodak. They developed the photos, reloaded the film, and sent it back to you. It was genius and simple, and it changed everything. For the first time in history, ordinary people could capture their memories. Kodak didn't just invent a camera, they invented the idea of preserving the moment. That's why their marketing hit so hard. The Kodak moment wasn't a tagline, it became part of English language. The early 90s grew into a machine unlike anything the business world had seen. They didn't just dominate cameras, they owned the entire ecosystem around photography. They made the film, they made the cameras, they made the chemicals to develop photos. They ran the labs, they sold the paper that photos were printed on. Every time someone wanted to take a picture, anyone in the world, Kodak made money multiple times from the same customer. By the mid-1970s, Kodak controlled 90% of all film sales and 85% of all camera sales in the United States. By 1996, their peak year, Kodak revenues $16 billion. Their stock crossed $90 per share. The company was worth over $31 billion. They employed 145,000 people around the world. They were ranked the fifth most valuable brand on the planet, right behind Disney, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's. This was an empire, not a company. And then in 1975, one of their own engineers failed a device that eventually burned it all down. Sasson was 24 years old when he built the first digital camera. It was bulky. It took 20 seconds to tape one single image. The resolution was 0.01 megapixels, barely visible. When Sasson presented it into Kodak's management, the reaction was not excitement. It was silence. Then concern. Then a quiet decision that would echo for decades. Shelve it. Don't talk about it outside these walls. And I want you to understand this wasn't stupidly. It was fear driven by math. Kodak film business had a profit margin close to 70%. 70 cents of profit for every dollar of revenue. Digital photography didn't need a film, didn't need chemicals, didn't need development labs. If digital won, Kodak's entire profit model would disappear. So Kodak made a choice that too many companies make. They choose to protect what they have instead of building what was becoming. In 1981, Kodak commissioned an internal study. Their own head of market intelligence ran a deep analysis. The results were clear. Digital photography had the potential to fully replace Kodak's film business, but they estimated it will take 10 before digital became a real commercial threat. 10 years of warning, a decade to prepare, a decade to pivot, and what did Kodak do with that time? They used it to sell more film. Kodak didn't fail because they didn't see digital coming. They failed because they saw it coming and they chose not to move. That is a completely different kind of failure. It is far more dangerous. By the late 1990s, digital cameras became real affordable, accessible. In 2001, Kodak bought a photo sharing platform called Photo. Before Facebook exists, before Instagram exists, they owned the future of social media photography, and they used it to encourage people to print digital images. It turned the social revolution into a printing service. If Kodak had looked at Photo the way Mark Zuckerberg later looked at Instagram, we would be living in a completely different world. Instead, they sold Photo to Shutterfly in 2012, the same year they failed for bankruptcy. From 2003 to 2011, Kodak cut 47,000 jobs, bought 13 manufacturing plants, and shut down 130 photo labs. They had not made since 2004. In 2012, Eastman Kodak, 131 years old, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Their stock, which had traded $90 just 15 years earlier, fell to $0.78. The guerrilla photography had failed. Lesson 1. Innovation inside a company can be strangled by the company's own success. Every innovation at Kodak was evaluated through one filter. Does this hurt or fail business? When your most successful product became the enemy of your next product, you have a crisis. The answer is never to protect the old product. The answer is to cannibalize yourself before anyone else does. Lesson 2. Having 10 years of warning means nothing if your culture refuses to change. Kodak had the decade of notice. The digital team inside Kodak always a threat, not an opportunity. When your own people feel like enemies within the company, you have already lost. Lesson 3. The most dangerous position in business is being too big to fail and believing it. Size is not armor. In fact, size often makes companies slower to move, slower to change, and slower to survive. Kodak didn't disappear after emerging from bankruptcy in 2013. Kodak reinvented itself as a much smaller, quieter company focusing on commercial printing and packaging solution. They are not a consumer brand anymore, but they still exist. Proof that even after the worst fell, there's always a path forward. If you are willing to completely change who you are, if you were leading Kodak in 2001, when they bought Photo, what would you have done with it? Would you have turned it into a photo sharing platform and competed with what became Facebook and Instagram? Or would you have done exactly what Kodak did? Drop your own thoughts below. I will be reading every single one. If this story added value, hit like and share it with someone who runs a company. And subscribe if you haven't already.